So faithful viewers of my channel know that the last few videos I've been covering level 3 of Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and I have 2 more playlists which go over level 1 and 2. And in the process of looking at those dungeons, really intensely such that I can give my humble insights, it has gotten me thinking about the geometry of dungeons, the architectural features, and also how much, let's say the past 20 years, mega dungeons have kind of gone out of fashion. They've come back recently. What happened was we started making dungeons that were very utilitarian. I mean, a tomb or a temple, oftentimes 1 level, 5 rooms, but even 2 levels or whatnot. And there's sort of a fake realism that breaks in when you're doing a dungeon that's clearly utilitarian. You start to make square rooms, hallways that all make sense. We lost a little of that fun house aspect of drawing out dungeons, any kind of crazy shapes we wanted, all sorts of shifting walls and floors and all this kind of thing. And I think we lost a little bit of the fun in making dungeons. So what I thought I would talk about is how to make the rooms, hallways of your dungeons unique and interesting. Yes, some odd shapes, but some other elements as well, so that your players have unique areas for encounters, for exploration, so that you can combine these with ideas on who built the dungeon and why would they have created these shapes. Because the thing is, D&D is a game in a world of magic where we break the laws of physics. It's not that difficult to suspend our disbelief. So we can have underground structures that are built in an unrealistic, fanciful way. We don't worry about wacky or non-functional ideas, which, come to think of it, is pretty much how I roll. Hello again, gang. KR King here, helping you homebrew your own D&D campaign. And I'm going to be talking about dungeon design, homebrewing your own dungeons, thinking about how you're drawing them, and what are the basic building blocks of making dungeons such that you can start to bend those a little bit, or alter them in a way that makes the dungeons you design interesting. Because everything in your dungeon exists in the spaces between these components, which relates to the basic idea of 3-dimensional space in which you have height, width, and depth, which in a dungeon translate into these basic components. You have walls, ceilings, and floors, and then you have entrances and exits of varying sizes, and then finally you have architectural features like pillars or dioceses or fountains. So I always start with walls as my basic building block when I'm creating dungeons, whether I'm drawing on paper or whether on a computer, because I'm looking down at this map. So the ceiling is invisible, the floor is just there, it's the walls that are defining it, but these other components are very important. So what I'm going to do is get on Dungeon Draft. That's the computer program that I use to create these dungeons, and talk about ideas on these basic components of dungeon design. All right, so now we're in Dungeon Draft. I'm going to start a new file, basically the most basic that I can think of here for this most basic example of a room in a dungeon, which I'm just going to start with. I mean, it could be even smaller, but let's just start with a 10 by 10 room, 2 5-foot squares by 2 5-foot squares, and we'll put a door right there. Now, basically, this is a large closet or storage area. Doesn't have much functionality as a room. And if I look, I've made some tokens. So if I bring out basic size tokens, 5-foot squares, as you can see, if I move these guys around, they go into this room, and, they're going to take up a huge amount of space in there. Maybe they could hide, especially if this were a secret door. Maybe there's something they have to retrieve, but you're not going to have much opportunity for an encounter. If I go back to my object tool, let's say a Gorillion, which is basically that size, that's going to take up the entire room. Now, it might be humorous to see a Gorillion and, the players burst in on it. But in terms of functionality, this room is, as I said, it doesn't give us much to work with. We need to go to a larger size for the game functions. So I'm just going to go new, again, discard that. Again, the same size here. Let's create a room. That's a little more functional. Let's just say that we're going to make a room that is 50 by 25. It's not huge, but it's just a little more functional for our purposes. And we'll put, again, a door in there right here. And perhaps, because it's a room this big, you would have one exit. We'll just put one here. Again, you could have multiple. You could have this a hub of different hallways. Let's just do with 2. Okay, so now you have an opportunity for more room in terms of encounters, right? Here is our party. We'll just do these 2 guys. Here is our Gorillion, who now isn't nearly as dominant as they were in the 10 by 10 room. And you could have something larger. I have this is a fire giant over here. I'm going to turn my snap off, make this easier. And they are 3, so that's pretty big, right? That's taking up quite a bit of room. You could have, if you really wanted to get crazy here, let's just get rid of this guy. You could have something like a purple worm. Now, again, I don't really know. It's 4 by 4. Look at the size of that. It does fit in the room. Now, a big question that you have with something like this, how did it get in this room? You could do the old, Madhouse dungeon of Hallister. He put this purple worm here, and then he feeds it with creatures that stumble into the room. But most likely, it's going to need some way to get in and out of this room. And one of the easiest ways in terms of entrances and exits is to, let's see here, is to create like a hole in the floor here underneath this. We'll make this a little bigger. And there's a hole here, which again, you got to get around the hole to get out of this. And the worm emerges from this hole. Okay. And this also, you ask the question of how high is the ceiling? Because even if this purple worm is down in a hole, it needs some area to come up, sort of rear at the players. Well, the standard operating thing for a lot of people is the width of a room, 25 feet. It should be a 25-foot ceiling. If you get bigger, obviously, if you get to hundreds and hundreds of feet, it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. Although, as we'll talk about, when you get into the giant rooms, that's pillars and things like that. When you have a hallway, whether it is 10-foot wide, or 5-foot wide, or in today's world, people tend to make these 10 feet wide. I don't have snap-on, but these tend to have 10-foot ceilings as a standard thing. You don't have to follow that, by the way, to make something interesting. The players emerge, and they're in a 10-foot corridor, but the height stretches beyond their dark vision or torchlight. That can be very disconcerting. That's the psychological effect of of ceiling heights. So here we have, let's say that this is 25 feet. If it's got a hole here, this purple worm has enough room to come in here and harass the players. All right, so now I'm going to, let's just get rid of that, and I'm going to get rid of these guys. And I'm going to suggest another out-of-the-box situation. What if you have a room like this, but it's 5 feet high, right? Very disconcerting. It could even be 3 feet high, although the players have to crawl through. But let's just say it's 5 feet. What's the air like in there, right? Why is it that height? And let's say it's a growing area for fungal life, mushrooms and things are tending these things, goblins or whatever that eat them. Imagine the air in there filled with the spores and everything. And you have the violet fungus and all those other things that can be hiding. And all through here, the players have to navigate with that 5-foot height. Very disconcerting. You could also have a hallway that comes out at ground level. Turn my snap back on. And we'll just go up into the whatever. But it comes from floor level, but it's only 3 feet high, right? And maybe like a giant snake is back in here, has some kind of lair. I'll just make oops, let me see here. That's not very good, but that's its lair. So it's coiled in here where it brings its victims, and it comes out 3 feet high to feast, right? that can be so the players see this 3-foot chamber, they think, what is that? And it's more interesting than just having a giant snake in the room. All right, I'm going to zip. Here's another thing. What if the players enter this room, and I'll just say, well, let's get rid of that. There's no door to these exits to this room, but the ceiling is 200 feet high, right? And all growing in here, all up in those 200 feet, are tons and tons of vines and plants. And these vines are so thick that at certain levels on the way up 200 feet, it forms floors, basically, that the players climb up and they can exit out either to the outside, let's just say, light coming in that allows these vines to grow. But again, we're in a dungeon. We're not worried about suspension of disbelief. So it could be creatures that live in there. Let's look at something like, for instance, our friend that we had from the very beginning, the Gorillion, who's now gigantic for some reason, but we'll just zoom him down. He's now up in those vines. Again, they're drawn to ancient places for whatever reason in their history. I'm going to just say vines. I don't know what I've got for vines in here. So, and then you've got vines that you can use, to place in here, but you can also have vine creatures. There's a number of these. A lot of them are homebrewed. They have the vine guardians, which is a whole group of vines together. You have a vine blight, this sort of thing, other plant-based creatures. And what it does is, with that high ceiling height, same basic square, boring shape, we've seen how different aspects of the ceiling can affect the uniqueness and interest and gameplay mechanics that we're dealing with. I mentioned holes in the floor. Another nice thing with holes is, do the players, especially if it goes down, I'm going to say holes. All right, so you have a hole in the floor. Let's use this one. It's a little more dramatic. Okay, so there's a 5-foot hole, 10 by 10. We had the one, let me get rid of our Gorillion friend here. We had the one that we used with Mr. Purple Worm. So you have a giant hole in the floor, right? What do the players do? They've got rope. Do they climb down? It's a very nerve-wracking experience when you're going down a hole in the floor. All right, so let's go to something even larger than this. Using the same basic thing. Let's take a room that's really big, that we can really think about some cool ideas. Let's say that it's going to be 100 feet. So that's going to be 20 by 50. That is a big-ass room, right? And again, with the doors, sometimes here, I very much want, oops, I'm going to go a little farther down, to make like double doors, right, on both sides of this, okay? And this is a classic room, hub room, where you've got doors going in all directions, secret doors, whatever. Just an absolutely massive room, and a room that has all sorts of opportunities for different things, in terms of ceiling heights, floors, all sorts of stuff. And just to review, notice how our figures here, are very small in comparison to this room, whereas our Purple Worm friend, he's still going to be big, right? I'll take off my snap. He's got his 4 by 4 size, but there's a little bit more room for the players and our Purple Worm friend to enter or exit. And in theory, could it squeeze through there? You could make these larger doors if you didn't want to have the hole in the floor or the ceiling, as it were. Another classic gag with the Purple Worm type creature is it comes down from above. But here again, with a room this size, I don't think the ceiling necessarily is going to be 50 feet tall. You certainly could. That's actually kind of cool. Let's say that it's 50 feet tall. Well, you're going to have some support probably. I mean, you can do anything you want, obviously. But let's just say pillars. And I will go with this. Let's see, where do I want to put that? And how big are these? Now, again, usually for logic, you might say that they support sort of like this and this, okay? And obviously what pillars do is they provide cover for, let's see here, for creatures. You know, we have some medium-sized guys here. Here's a were-rat, right? And you've got a nest of were-rats hiding behind these pillars so that the players come along. The other thing, maybe goblins, you know, whatever you want, they can always hide behind these structural features. All right, so let's just get rid of those guys, and I'll get rid of my friend, the purple worm. Now, the other thing that a large, high ceiling like this encourages are the potential for flying creatures, flying attacks. Now, again, they have to have perches. If you have something, let's say, there he is, he's tiny. So a gargoyle, which actually is not that big, but gargoyles could have perches inside on the sides of these pillars, you know, built in where they made the pillars, and you see the gargoyles there. They can also have perches up here on the sides of these walls, just waiting for people to enter. But, you know, you can get a little more creative. If you've got a 100-foot ceiling, let's say 100 feet, 50 feet up could be a balcony that runs along one of these walls, all of these walls, whatever. Again, this can lead to other sections that are not available to the players through standard hallways. Obviously, it's going to be at a higher up level, but, you know, you're really not going to, depending on, if you're doing a Mad Mage type thing where all the levels are pertinent to the level of creatures, okay, but if you're just doing kind of a mega dungeon that you get in there and you go back up somewhere because it's inaccessible, there could still be deadly creatures. Now you can have something a little more nasty, let's say a wyvern, which I believe is large, or is it huge? I have to check that. But so you got something like a wyvern that could be perched on one of these. If you have, this is another classic thing, you take a, let's say you make this pillar a little bit bigger. The pillar is a little bit bigger, okay? And all of them are. And it's ruined, right? So we have, the other ones are still there. So now you can do something, you know, like destruction, and just have some fragments of pillars lying on the ground here, such that now it makes sense. One of these pillars broken off, and the wyvern has taken up its perch on top of this pillar. The players enter, and the wyvern makes its attack. This is the sort of thing to think about. You have these features, these pillars holding up logically this room. They provide cover for things, and they provide potential for creatures to fly in on. Another thing that you can have with a very high room like this is you can have windows and things that look out from higher levels. Again, depending on your level structure, the players see these windows. There doesn't seem to be any way to get to them. Do they climb the walls? Are they, you know, again, you have the players with all sorts of spider climbing abilities, whatever, levitates. But it's just a feature that makes it a little bit harder to get up into, and it may be an isolated area of the dungeon and harder to get back down from. All right, so I'm just going to get rid of all of this stuff, basic room, and I'll get rid of these guys here. Your standard, just room, door in, door out. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about unique exits. And again, notice we're still just on the basic rectangular dungeon room. We're not worrying about yet fancy geometry. So I already mentioned the balcony. I already mentioned the windows. You can also do an air shaft. You can have an air shaft that runs from an area, high up in the walls. Turn my snap on, and that shaft can be. I'll turn the snap off, actually, because what you could do, let's go up in here. Oops, I'm going to go like this. And you could have an air shaft that, let's say, is 3 feet wide, something like that runs off. Again, I'm just going to try to make that so it's Right. This is an air shaft. This is a classic James Bond or Captain Kirk, whatever. They're always climbing through air shafts. But in theory, there might be air shafts. What would live there? What would come out of that? Where would it lead to? You can also have in the floor chutes and things like that. These can be traps, but these can also be, a garbage chute. So do we want, this, I'll use the same size here again. This could, instead of being, it just goes down to a garbage area. It also, these kind of chutes, they can bend down and then turn at an angle. They can also be very slick with all the stuff that's gone down in this hole or whatever. The water has drained down. It's a natural spot for it. And obviously you can have a thing like a trap door in here, an entrance to something. This is very obvious, but still it's something there. You can have a drainage grate that's covered. This is a cage, but it could be substitute for a grate that goes down into a sewer system. Don't forget about these going down to different levels. All right, I'm just going to get rid of that, those two, like so. And I will edit points here. And I'll just get rid of that, okay. Here is another interesting thing. Think about the floors and think about different levels for your floors. And here's an example. I'm going to use the pattern tool. And just to define this, I'm going to say different pattern shapes. And I will just say, let's see, this. And we'll start there. I want to go half and half. What is it going to be here? Is it going to be like that? I'll do that. And then I'll do one like so. And then I'll do another one here. What should that be? Like so. All right. What do these represent? They represent different heights for each of these levels. So this is going to be, the center one will be 20 feet lower. This will be, say, 10 feet higher, and then 20 feet higher. And so to denote those, you get your stairs. Okay. And I don't know, I'll just use this. So the rule of thumb on stairs is it's 12 feet for every 10. So if we go up here, and we'll say this is going up. However you want to do this. Actually, that should be good, I think. No, because each of these is 5. Excuse me. Like that, maybe. There you go. You're going up 5 feet. Then you can do this where you copy. Bring that into position there. And you're going to go a little farther here, whatever you want to do. That's 20 feet up to here. And then we can have, and I'll just turn that around, those being down, whatever that signifies, like so. And it's wider. I'm going to do that. Like so. And there you go. As you can see, this goes down, this goes up. And then these doors are down here, and then you have doors up here, right? And along the sides here, again, creatures, they're up here at the height, where you just have these different heights. Another thing that you can do, if I grab, whoops. All right, can I get rid of that? Delete, okay. Instead of having that pattern there, you can have water down in here, right? So this is flooded, and maybe this door is under the water if there is an entrance there. You know, maybe it's a drain of some kind. I don't need to be like that. But that adds another element. You've got these two high sections, then you got something live down here. Is there an escape through this? Can the players use that to get a back door on something or whatever? We haven't even talked about what might be in this area here in terms of other doors, obstacles, whatever. And all of this stuff, these different levels, this water, whatever, is in a simple square rectangular room. All right, so let's look at something like that. Discard everything. Start again with our basic shape. You could do, you know, a circular room. You can do odd shapes. You can make a, you know, triangular room. Weirdly, you know, any kind of shape you want. In the old days, drawing these was a nightmare, but electronically or whatever, then you just, if you connect these, let me turn my snap off. Right? And these can look interesting, right? They can have all sorts of, you know, weird things to them. In and of themselves, what is the functionality just beyond weird? You know, that's for you to decide. Again, though, you can vary. You can have different aspects of this. So, for example, let's just talk about. We'll do. I'll make a circle room and a triangle. Not triangle. I'll just do that kind of shape, and then I'll connect them like so. Okay, and it kind of looks like some kind of device or microphone or something. I don't know. Now, what can I do in addition to, and of course with this you can just put your doors in wherever, right? Double doors here, whatever. You have this, well, there's a number of things you can do because you got to think about your floor levels. If the floor is lowered, you can just do something as simple as putting the stairs in there again. Such that this, you know, this goes down a certain amount. As I said, it's usually 12 feet per 10. So something like that. You're down 10 feet to this lower area just to be interesting. But let's be even more, let's do something even wilder. Let's have our water. And we'll say there's water that runs through these. Like so. And I'm going to go all the way up like this. And I'll go up in here like this. And if I wanted to, you know, I would probably Alt. Just get rid of some of that excess. Again, how much I want to just for example. Part of it is it bugs me a little bit. So I want to just get rid of that. Okay, so now we've got this water in here, and there's a few blips down in here. I suppose those could be rocks, though, too. What the hell? All right, so how does this water work in here? Well, what you can do, if you go, like, so think about the path tool. Path. You do have some interesting shapes that you can use here. And I don't know what our size is. Let's just see. Is that big enough? Maybe. Yeah, probably. I'm going to escape it. I'm going to say paths. Make it a little bit bigger. And come in here. So now it's clear that this is goes down, and again, however steep you want that to be, and you just do the same thing here. Very quick. So the players come into this room here, and they've got this, you know, steep shape, however long it goes down, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30. They can see water down here, and that's the only way. And this could be, this shaft right here could all be submerged. Okay, so they can't see. They just see this pool like right here, and then there's a pool right here they have to swim through. Or you could have a ceiling height where there is air there so that they can, in theory, either swim across there more easily without having to hold their breath, maybe even construct a raft or something to get over to this size. But the functionality of the bizarre shape, it's okay with this situation. It just is kind of fun or whatever, right? But let's do something else. I'll say new, discard. All right, so what the wall geometry can also do is provide areas for creatures that would naturally look to areas to ambush. We've talked about up high with the ceiling height. We've talked about coming from holes like the purple worm, side walls like the 3-foot thing that a snake could come out of or something. If we have a weird shape or just unusual shape, let's see. I will create, this what looks to be a standard. Well, we'll go like so. And I'll make this big enough that it is, in fact, a room. And I'll say, I could just make this like this. Build like so. And then I'm going to add some weird shapes, maybe like okay. And, edit this. Okay. What you can have with this kind of thing, one more over here, just kind of like, okay. What you can have is creatures that are hanging out in here, right? Go back down to our thing. I've got a spider here. I don't know if it would be that big, but you've got a spider hiding in here or down in this hallway. And again, you're just trying to make it so that it's interesting such that, this spider has an area where the players come down, it's going to hear them. And again, if you want to put webs in here or whatnot, you can. But just to have things that are waiting in here, weird shapes. Again, you can also have a reward for the players there. It isn't just like the creature, but, of course, if it has a lair. But that's the thing about unusual shapes, is that it creates areas for creatures to ambush players. So there are some ideas on creating rooms and hallways, chambers in dungeons that are interesting for your players, that create unique environments for encounters, and make sense in terms of what lives there, what created this dungeon environment. And if you like what you've seen, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always looking for more. Please leave some comments because I love to read them and to respond. But most importantly, as always, my friends, keep playing Dungeons & Dragons, the greatest game ever invented, and tell somebody else about it.